At a coal mining facility, a worker was manually pushing a loaded wagon along rails toward a mine shaft elevator. Focused on moving the heavy cart, he failed to verify the elevator platform was in position at floor level. The elevator had already ascended to an upper level, leaving an open shaft in its place. As the worker pushed the wagon forward with momentum, it rolled directly into the unprotected elevator shaft opening. The wagon plunged down the shaft, and the worker, unable to stop his forward motion, fell into the void immediately after it. He dropped multiple levels down the mine shaft, suffering fatal injuries from the fall. That's why we should never assume elevator position without visual confirmation and proper safety gates in place. Look at this machine operator in green shirt. He was loading plastic materials into an automated processing machine. After placing items into the lower feed rack, he activated the equipment to begin its cycle. While the machine was running, he reached up to adjust components in the upper rack area. His hand became caught between the moving press plates as the automated compression sequence engaged. The powerful hydraulic mechanism crushed his hand. His coworker immediately deactivated the equipment, but it was too late. His hand was gone. All machinery adjustments must be performed only after complete shutdown and lockout procedures. Workers should never reach into operating equipment under any circumstances. That's a vehicle transport yard. Here, a car carrier truck was loaded with a vehicle on it. A worker was walking through the ground level area directly beneath the loaded port trailer. Unfortunately, the car slipped from the vehicle and plummeted downward, crushing him completely beneath its mass. Vehicle transport failures create instant fatality risks for anyone in the drop zone. All vehicle securing systems, including chains, straps, and wheel chocks, must be inspected and rated for loads being transported. Have a look at these three workers who were attempting to close a large metal gate structure. The heavy gate was mounted on hinges at both ends. As the workers pushed the gate into position, the connection at one end suddenly failed. The massive gate panel detached from its mounting point and began falling. One worker positioned at the base was unable to escape in time. The heavy metal structure collapsed directly onto him, pinning him brutally beneath its considerable weight. Large, movable gates and panels must have properly rated mounting hardware inspected before each use. All personnel should stand clear of potential fall paths when moving heavy structures. Now you'll see an unimaginable scene of a railway crossing. A pedestrian attempted to cross active train tracks despite clear warning signals. She misjudged the approaching train's speed and distance, believing she had sufficient time to reach the other side. As she moved across the tracks, the train arrived at the crossing much faster than anticipated. Unable to complete the crossing in time, she was struck by the moving train and killed instantly. Railway crossings present extreme hazards where split-second miscalculations prove fatal. Never attempt to cross railway tracks when warning signals are active or trains are visible in either direction. Another railway accident, in which you can see a worker holding a torch, was walking along the tracks near a passing train. Focused on his inspection duties, he failed to monitor traffic from both directions. Without warning, another train approached from behind on an adjacent track. The worker had no time to react before being struck by the oncoming train. The impact threw him onto the tracks between the rails. Fortunately, the clearance beneath the train allowed him to survive, though his arm was completely severed in the collision. Railway workers face constant danger from trains approaching from multiple directions at high speeds. All track workers must maintain situational awareness of approaching trains on all adjacent tracks and have designated lookouts monitoring traffic. Workers should never assume track safety based on one visible train and must verify all tracks are clear before entering active railway areas. This 48-year-old maintenance worker had completed repair work on the rooftop and was descending using a safety rope system. The worker was suspended several stories above the ground floor, relying entirely on the rope for support. Midway through his descent, the safety rope suddenly failed under his weight. The rope snapped completely, and the worker plummeted from significant height. He struck the ground floor with devastating force, suffering fatal injuries from the impact. Fall protection equipment failures represent catastrophic safety system breakdowns. All ropes, harnesses, and anchor points must be inspected before each use and replaced according to manufacturer specifications. Workers at height should use redundant fall protection systems with backup safety lines. Regular testing and certification of all fall arrest equipment by qualified inspectors is mandatory to prevent rope failures during critical operations. At a loading yard surrounded by stacked shipping containers, a worker was positioned behind a flatbed truck loaded with construction materials. The truck driver, unaware of the worker's location, began reversing the vehicle. The worker failed to move clear of the reversing path and remained in the truck's blind zone. The truck continued backing up and pinned the worker against a fixed object behind him. The crushing force between the truck and the solid barrier caused fatal injuries. Reversing vehicles create deadly blind zones where ground personnel cannot be seen by operators. All loading areas require designated spotters to guide reversing operations and ensure personnel clearance. At a manufacturing facility, a worker was operating a heavy processing equipment mounted on an elevated frame structure. Without warning, the mounting system supporting the machinery failed catastrophically. The entire machine assembly detached from its supports and collapsed downward. A worker positioned directly beneath the equipment had no opportunity to escape. The multi-ton machine fell directly onto him, crushing him instantly under its massive weight. Equipment mounting failures occur when supports corrode, bolts loosen, or structural components fatigue over time. All elevated machinery must have mounting systems regularly inspected by structural engineers and properly maintained. That was the most horrific death of a worker who was inspecting near a large CNC machine with an automated reciprocating mechanism. The equipment was cycling back and forth during its programmed operation. The worker entered the machine's movement zone to inspect components at the rear of the equipment. The heavy machinery moved backward with tremendous force, striking the worker's head. The impact caused instant death and his head got separated from the body. Workers often misjudge timing or forget equipment is active. All automated equipment zones must have physical barriers preventing entry during operation. At a power generation facility, workers were conducting routine operations near high-pressure steam equipment and hot process systems. Without warning, a catastrophic system failure occurred in the pressurized equipment. A massive explosion of superheated steam and flames erupted from the failed component. The blast struck a worker who was positioned in the immediate vicinity. The force of the explosion threw him violently backward, while the extreme heat caused severe burns across his body. High-pressure steam systems operate at temperatures exceeding 400 degrees and pressures capable of causing explosive failures. All pressure vessels require regular inspection, testing, and maintenance to identify weakening or corrosion. Another scary accident happened when this truck was unloading a heavy load of soil on the roadside when the ground beneath gave way. The vehicle's balance shifted under the extreme weight, and the truck tipped backward into a deep ditch. The massive vehicle overturned with thousands of kilograms of material crashing down. Heavy trucks must only unload on stable, reinforced ground away from slopes and weak edges. Operators must always assess the terrain and secure the vehicle before raising the dump bed. This worker was performing welding tasks on top of an industrial tank when flammable gases leaked from inside. As the torch came into contact with the vapors, an explosion erupted without warning. The powerful blast hit the worker violently and engulfed the area in fire and debris. Such incidents often result in devastating injuries or fatalities within seconds. Welding and cutting work must never be performed on tanks, pipes, or containers unless they are fully cleaned, ventilated, and tested for gas presence. Strict hot work permits, gas monitoring, and protective barriers are essential to prevent catastrophic explosions. Even a small concentration of flammable vapor can turn a routine welding job into a deadly disaster.